for joining this panel discussion. And can I say, well done on being, at the first panel discussion. Like, it's early morning, it's about claims. The dedication is remarkable. So thank you. My name is Val Uverov. I'll be moderating the discussion today. A little bit about me. I've spent the past 6-7 years building high-growth Insurtech businesses. First at Zego, building products and operations there. And then later on, I was head of claims, building out the claims function across the different markets that Zego was in. Afterwards, I joined Marshmallow as general manager for their home insurance proposition. And more recently, SquareTrade, I was the business development director there. Currently, I'm COO of an early stage startup, not in insurance as it happens, so there is light at the end of the tunnel. But yeah, that's a little bit about me. I have two panelists here. Thank you for joining, Oded and Bill. I'll ask you to tell us a little bit about yourselves and your companies, please. Bill?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Bill Brower. I'm Vice President of Industry Relations for Solera. Great to see everyone. I'm not surprised you're here early. We're claims people, right? We get started early. So thanks for joining us this morning. A little bit about my story. I've been in the insurance industry and the claims business for many years, most of my career. So I spent about 30 years on the insurance carrier side. I worked with a couple of large companies. I'm from the U.S. I worked with companies including Nationwide Insurance and Liberty Mutual Insurance, heading up claims. Then spent a few years with a big data company called LexisNexis Risk Solutions before joining Solera a year ago. And so great to be with you. A little bit about Solera. You're probably familiar with our company, but we operate in 4 key areas. Certainly insurance claims, and we provide services across the globe. We're in over 100 countries providing these services. So we are in the insurance claims space. We're also in vehicle repair. And so we provide a number of software solutions that are used in all types of repair, whether it be collision or mechanical repair. We additionally have a division that's dedicated to dealerships and providing the software needed for auto dealerships. And then finally, we have a fleet group. And so whether that be a commercial fleet or a trucking fleet business, we have solutions that provide end-to-end benefits there. So thank you again for being with us today.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Oded Barack, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of 5 Sigma. We are a SaaS, data-driven, soup-to-nuts claims management platform. Background, actually, I came from investment banking. No one's perfect. Later on, I've been a CFO, actually here in London, for a large energy commodity business. Ports, trains, you can imagine I was exposed to hundreds of millions of dollars of programs, which was a chaos. And in 2016, I founded 5 Sigma, which is, as I said, a claim management platform. So we see a range of players that we actually serve, TPAs, MGAs, carriers, and self-insured entities, and we see what you call the claims journey from a variety of angles. It's great to be here today.
Cool. Thank you both. Just before we begin, I'd like to point your attention to the Q&A. So there is a Slido open for this stage. It's kind of behind the guys here. So go to the website and please submit your questions. I'm not that interesting, and what the interest really comes from the audience, right? And all your excellent questions. So please ask your questions throughout. Okay, let's go straight into the panel then. So the topic of the discussion is about redefining the claims journey. So it makes sense for me to begin with some context setting. Which bits, in your view, are most in need of redefinition? Where in the claims journey is it currently lacking? Let's begin with you, Oded.
Well, I think there's various perspective to look at it. When you think about the customer side, the insured, we should ask the question, I would say, when does a claim start? Does it really start at FNOL? Do they submit a claim? Or actually you expand the model to the incident level, right? With IoT, telematics in the vehicle, actually workflows could kick in way before a claim was submitted. So how do you accommodate for that? Want to take it even before. How do we preempt claims to actually happen? You know, the best claims journey is not having a claim. So prevention, then proactive to obviously build trust and so on. The second question will be, what is a customer? The claims journey is a customer journey. There's various customers, there's a wide range, you know, from millennials, right, they don't want to talk to any human, just chatbots, to somebody who actually needs a hand-holding and, you know, guide me for every step of the way. And then I would say the third way to look at it is the sum of the parts. You can actually have a very, very strong F&OL experience, but everything else is broken beyond that point. What is going to be yours as a consumer, as an insured or policyholder? What's going to be your feedback? And so we tend to look at it as a, you know, in a holistic experience. And you know, part of the reason we decided to go to this heavy lifting thing of the full claims platform, because it's really the journey from start to end and not just a point solution across the path.
What do you think, Bill?
Yes, so I've had the good fortune of being a part of claims from many years ago, before the software solutions became the norm. And actually we had no software when I began, it was pen and paper. And so one of the things that I experienced as a new claims adjuster many, many years ago was there's a lot of handoffs. And so when a claim would occur, you know, it may start with the agent, it may then move to a call center, and then it may move to an appraiser, and then maybe an adjuster. And so a person with just a simple collision claim, one car accident, might speak with 4 people to get that claim handled, and that seemed very inefficient. So fast forward to today, obviously we've got great technology. But one of the challenges that I see, I write about this in the industry as well, is that I feel like that as an insurance industry, and I view myself as an insurance industry person, having been on the carrier side for so many years, we're rather slow to adopt technology, and we oftentimes bolt it on. But to give you an example, real life example, I have 2 college-age kids. My daughter, my youngest, had her first accident. Fortunately, she's okay. But she had her first accident a few months ago. I guess it was September of last year. And so, of course, Dad's been in the insurance industry. Dad, how about take care of my claim for me? So happy to do that. Again, I live in the U.S. I think the process is probably similar in many of our countries. But I call my insurance company, a top carrier, a great company, report my loss with the phone. I would have used an app and just reported this electronically, but since it was my daughter's claim, I thought, okay, I'll call. I just want to make sure that I get this right. Once I did that, then I get assigned to a direct repair shop, and I knew the shop that I wanted to do my repair, so it was a shop approved by the insurance company. And so the process followed the same process that I would have followed if I had reported this claim in 1995. So think about that a second. The process was really no different. Even though we have a lot of technology, it was phone calls to the insurance company, phone call from the body shop to me. Of course, I'm in meetings all day, so I had to call back, and we played phone tag, and then I take my car in for an inspection. So you can think about how the process does involve a lot of touches in most organizations. And so I would say the number one thing that I see is the challenge is how do we redesign the claims process for the customer, with the customer in the center, leveraging digital, leveraging technology to wrap around the customer instead of, you know, bolting things on to legacy processes. I think that's one of the areas that really needs a lot of work today.
Yeah. So it sounds like all of it is the problem.
Yeah, all of it, but I think it's the biggest thing is step back and think about if you were starting over today, right? If we didn't have all the legacy, if we were starting over today, would you do it the same way, or would you design your processes more like an Amazon type approach to the customer? I think that's the key, is really thinking about how to do this differently for those customers that are the most digitally inclined customers.
Exactly right, and actually that's a really good segue to, I guess, the meat and substance of the panel. So, Bill, staying with you, when we talk about omnichannel, what does it involve, and is it not just a buzzword?
No, I don't think it's just a buzzword, and a good question. I think, to me, the omnichannel is really about servicing the customer the way the customer wants to be served. I mentioned I have 2 college-age kids, right? If they are reporting their claim, I guarantee you they're using their smartphone, but they're not calling anyone, right? They're going to be clicking a few buttons. They're going to be using maybe a QR code or something. They're going to be using some technology that allows them to communicate simple, the way they like to communicate on a device. Now, if you're talking with, my mother, for example, if she had a claim, she would definitely be the one to pick up the phone and call. She would prefer to have only person-to-person communications, and that's great. So to me, it's really designing a process that really works for all of your customers. And if you look at the customer base today, we have a larger percent of our customer base today, I think around the globe, that are much more digital savvy. After COVID, we all sort of, whether you like digital or not, everybody got pushed to digital during COVID. And what I saw is that became more of a tipping point. And what we saw, wow, sorry. So what we saw was a quick move to leveraging digital, and people who were really less likely to use digital. My mother-in-law, for example, she became, she probably uses the digital stuff more today than most people I know. So it's really the omnichannel, in my view, is find the path that works for the client. But the worst thing we can do is to force people between different channels. If you're going to handle the claim digitally, provide a path that works end-to-end digitally. Give an option to opt out if they need it. If you're going to go the more traditional approach, don't try to force those people into digital if that's not what they're comfortable with. And so for me, it's really about aligning and segmenting your customer base and providing the service that they want at the time of claim.
And this point that Bill makes about different groups needing different things is right and is often overlooked, isn't it, Oded?
I think if we all look at the genesis of the Insurtech, what is actually this tsunami of new companies distribution platform came from, it's really coming from a decade late to the game after other industries like the fintech and the banks, right? Consumer expectations. So it really comes from the bottoms up, obviously complementary with the ability to use the right technology tools and data. Consumer have different expectation, and the big story around how do you cater to very wide range of expectation and preferences into a single product. I think it's a key challenge and a key thing. But I'm thinking about the world of consumer life cycle. Back to the point I said, is I prefer either talk to nobody or somebody actually take me through a phone call step by step. It changes. One thing doesn't change is consumer is the trust element. And I think when you think about how do we create along the, call it a customer, a policyholder management life cycle, how do I create a trust point? And I think that's where thinking about the proactive, the fact that I care about you not only when you submit a claim, but then obviously after you submitted a claim to make sure we are there for you. I think technology and data is the right bridge to augment between the different preferences on one hand and then the entire ecosystem on the other. Trust is a key thing. You cannot have trust if you don't provide transparency. That will be a second piece to this. And obviously everything wrapped around speed and user-friendly to really provide the right experience to everyone.
And I would add to that, I think trust is, you're exactly right. When you have, first of all, when you purchase your insurance policy, you're purchasing a promise that if you need us, we're there, we're going to help you. And that trust is so critical. I totally agree. And that's why it's so important to get the process right. Because if a customer is interacting with us digitally and we have some hiccups and things don't go well, then they're like, I don't know that I trust you to actually take care of me and take care of my claim properly. And so I agree. I think that is the number one, the number one characteristic about any process and what you're doing with the customer is you want to build the trust and the loyalty so that they're going to stay with you and they're going to feel good about that promise that you made to take care of them at time of claim.
I think I would just one point on this. I truly think that the claim is the singular opportunity to turn your customer crisis moment into a loyalty one. And think about it. Who even remembered that they have, on a personal side, just when they need to renew the policy, they get a reminder. We don't want to think about it. But then when we need you, you better be there. And still most of those, insured today, I believe, miss on this opportunity.
Yeah, and I think like when we say trust, although it's a big word, it's a big concept, it's created through quite small interactions, really. It's still, like if I'm a claimant, just help me out. Like a claim, depending on what sort of insurance it is, but it could be quite a distressing event, like say motor accidents, right? That is quite distressing. What do I do? And I've certainly had, in my experience, as like I'm a claims guy, and yet as a claimant, I'm like, what's going on? I've been funneled into a digital process where it's like, actually, I just want to talk to someone. And I've been funneled through a digital process which was very good, streamlined, and straightforward. But then the claims handler on the other side asks for the same documentation again, which I've already uploaded. Kind of, why, guys? Like, why? No, absolutely agree.
I would just say to this point, think about, we focus on the customer, right, or the policyholder. Let's take a half step back and think about who is actually servicing that per individual at time of crisis. So it's really the adjusters, the claim handler. And so one of the things we figure out that obviously, as you can imagine, if you have an unhappy adjuster, you're going to have an unhappy customer most of the time, right? You're not going to be really enthusiastically serving them in the right way. So part of the view from a carrier perspective is how do I provide the right tools to the adjusting team, to the performing team, the ones who actually touches the adjuster on a daily basis, not only to the end consumer.
So let's go into more of that kind of stuff. So we talked about like process, again, another sort of word. So what is needed to actually make it happen? So Oded, if we stay with you, what are the key building blocks of a modern omnichannel approach?
So again, as I said, for me, it starts with an approach. Back. If you want to change the equation, you cannot stay with the same attitude, tools, approach to your customer. Something needs to change fundamentally. I think this is the biggest challenge from a change management perspective. How do I actually make it happen? So approach to the customer, and as I said, when does it actually start? I'm building the trust way before the incident happened or you submitted a claim. Transparency builds a huge amount of trust. Proactiveness, personalization will be a second piece. It comes on a daily basis. How do even the small, in the micro level, what channel do you prefer to communicate with, right? Some people, as I said, I want somebody actually calling me and telling me what to do versus, so transparency, I would say proactiveness. Automation is a big story here. And then taking care of the entire ecosystem, right? Your vendors, third parties, to be able to complete the cycle in the more, call it, frictionless path as possible.
What is the right mix between digitization and the human component?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example of the digital experience and where I see the human interaction coming in. Certainly the traditional is really mostly human involvement. You're not using digital as much. But for me, let me just focus a bit more on the digital experience. So I've done a lot over the years, and Solera has been very active in this space of looking at this concept that we like to call touchless claims. So touchless claims, what does that mean, Bill? What do you mean a touchless claim? What I'm really speaking of is we know that in the auto accident, the auto insurance space, a large percentage, over half of the claims are fender benders, right? There are no injuries. These are just, some damaged cars, but drivable, repairable type cars. In those situations, those are the types of claims that are really great claims to be considered for a touchless, if you will, touchless or fully automated claims process. How do you do that? Today, the challenge, I think, is a lot of times companies have an app or a place that you can go to report a claim, but the challenge is if I have an app, well, I took out my insurance, 6 years ago, gosh, I don't even know how to get back in my app for the claim and what was my password. And so it just becomes really hard to get there. So the first step is really making the process easy. I noticed when I checked into our event yesterday, I was provided with a ticket. I purchased a ticket for this event, and it had a QR code on it. And I was able to just take that over to the desk. They didn't ask me to fill out any forms. They had all of the information, and they handed me my badge. And I've noticed on our badges we have the QR code, so if you see someone you want to share your information, they can just scan the badge. Think about that at time of claim. If you're involved in an accident, and we have, in where I live, we have insurance cards with information that is kept in the car. If you get stopped by an officer, you have an accident, you take out your insurance card. Well, if that insurance card, and they don't have it today, by the way, but if that insurance card had a QR code, for example, that had my information built into it, then, and I talk about this, I actually have a presentation on just how a touchless claim can be processed. But to give you the highlights, if I'm involved in an accident, and maybe Val and I have an accident, I get out of my car, we chat, Val's not my best friend because I just crashed into his nice car, and so we're waiting for the police to come and write up a report. All right, if I have my insurance card, which I have taken that out anyway in the process of getting ready for the officer to come, and I see a QR code and I hover over it with my phone, that QR code could take me directly into the claim and provide a wealth of information right away that I don't have to type in. So it knows me, it knows my car. I can scan my license plate, so now it knows which car I'm driving. If I scanned Val's license plate, depending on what country you're in, there are companies that provide data so that you know who Val is, who he's insured with, and that kind of information. So think about that kind of an approach, where you're at time of claim, you scan the QR code, just like coming to this event, and now most of that loss report is provided. There'll be a few questions, but the key, I like to model after things that people like, and I use Amazon probably too much, but I do find that most people find Amazon to be very user-friendly, right? So if I've now identified as Val and I involved, I've got the license plate identified with pictures, then I'm able to just click a few buttons, and maybe I will immediately say I want to do my photograph for my car to create an estimate. At Solera, we have our AI estimating, so it triggers a simple text that I can use to take pictures, and that generates an automated estimate. And then I can just move throughout the process, pick my body shop, for example, or pick my rental car company. So when I think of a true touchless digital claims experience, it's one that requires no typing. It uses some of the latest capabilities. But as I mentioned in the early part of the talk, it's really about rethinking this process. If we didn't have those legacy processes, how would we really build the process digitally around the customer? And so when I think about how to make this work for those customers that are really digitally savvy and want that experience, that's how I would design it. But I would always provide the opportunity to opt out at any point in that process. The customer gets confused or they have a question, allow them to immediately reach someone for a conversation. In the studies that I've done over the years, customers, when they're given that as sort of that safety net, should they get stuck, they're much more receptive to using a digital process. So from the digital perspective, I think that's how I'd kind of frame this in a way that the customer could really do this on their own without waiting to talk with someone if they preferred.
And a lot of what you talk about would traditionally be called like straight-through processing.
Yes.
When we think about kind of like a lot newer technologies, AI, ChatGPT, let's talk about that for a moment. Where, Oded, do you see something like ChatGPT in the claims process? And presumably not just customer-facing stuff.
No, this is bigger than claims, right? It starts actually in the underwriting and the policy admin side and the contract you have between the policyholder and the insurer. And I think, you can take it deep and wide. I think STP is a good example of where you actually have 100% of the process touching 10% of the claims, right? Then you have the other way around of automation, talking about maybe 20% or 30% or 40% even of the entire claims journey being automated, but for 100% of the claims, going deeper. And the thing is that a claim is not just a one thing. Claim has a tendency to potentially escalate. Sometimes all of a sudden it's a negotiation story. Sometimes it's a litigation side. Obviously, you've got medical issues potentially happening. Part of the challenge from a technology standpoint, think about the variety of a claim, even in the same line of business, right? Take physical damage in auto versus bodily injury or PIP. They're a completely different entity still under the same auto claim. So to accommodate and to move from STP to something called a deeper side of what we call intelligent automation, in more and more depth, combining various data points to actually make the right decision, and not actually supporting only supporting the adjuster, but maybe potentially taking the action itself based on the trust that we actually have or the carrier has with technology. I think that's a big story, and I think that's a big tension between those two. You got endless amount of today, I would say, AI and machine learning tools. Some of them are still being figured out. Obviously, everybody knows the OCR side and NLP side, computer vision side for damage assessment and fraud detections. You got the question is not what tools; it's actually how do you actually create the workflow to move from the speed to the more depth in a more complex environment. So it's not only that the human, the consumer, the policyholder is different, but the claim is very different. By the way, for a SaaS company, just think about the productization of such a very different type of the same thing, of a claim. Very, very complex thing. As the joke says, it takes 9 months to bring a baby. It's not as if you're going to bring 9 ladies here, it's going to be 1 month. It takes iterations, it takes to change. You got to get feedback from the market. Customer insights plugged into the process, super, super important, how you generate that data. And then how do you process it and bring it to life and into production. But I think that's the fascinating thing, and I think that's the biggest opportunity when thinking about automation in the future. So one is the tools, the data. Second is, as we said, the consumer perspective, the adjuster perspective, and then the ecosystem perspective, right? The third party is the workflows that you need to actually put it all together.
Okay. Makes sense. We have a question from the Slido coming in, and as a reminder, please submit your questions. We have about a quarter of an hour on the panel left, so we'd love to have 2 or 3 questions for sure to the guys. I'll try to squeeze it in if it's part of the discussion, otherwise we'll leave it till the end. But the one that's sort of relevant now is we talked a lot about the various stages of the claims process, but which stage of the process do you think is the most ripe for modernization right now?
So I would say for automation, the area that is most well suited right now, which I think we are seeing a lot of forward progress on this, is the damage assessment. It's determining a couple things. I mean, the first thing we think about the estimate, but the first thing that we need to think about is the vehicle even repairable, or should this vehicle be totaled? In the markets that I have been most familiar with, I know that this is a major pain point. A lot of times insurance companies might take a couple of weeks or more to decide that a car is totaled. And that means the customer's in a rental car. That means they think their car is being repaired, but then they're going to find out it's being totaled. It just creates a lot of stress on the customer. So using AI to identify, one of the solutions we have identifies the total loss within a couple of seconds. To be able to just take the pictures and immediately say, I'm 95% sure this car is going to be totaled, to allow you to take that flow of the process rather than trying to repair. And that is working today, and I think that's a great way to start the process. And then secondly, it's the estimating of the damages. I mentioned my daughter's claim and going to my direct repair shop and going in a couple of times to get an estimate. But think about how the process would be different if, when I reported my claim, if I had been sent a link to take pictures, I take the pictures right away at my convenience, and then my body shop, they don't find out Bill Brower has a claim. Not only that, they also see the estimate that was AI generated. They see the pictures of the damages. So the body shop can then decide, do I need to actually see Bill's car before I schedule him for repair? Or is this the type of damage that I'm pretty comfortable with this AI estimate, or maybe with some changes I make, I'm just going to go ahead and schedule him to drop it off to do the actual repair and take one of the steps out, make it more efficient for the body shop as well as the consumer. So I would say there's many pieces that we can improve upon, but I think that one is the most well-developed to be able to, and many companies are doing this already, but to be able to really take advantage of that right away and to wow the customer, because when you can give a customer the damage assessment in a few hours, that's pretty impressive. Most people don't expect that.
I actually going to go to the two edges of the process. If you talked about one in the middle, which is damage assessment, think about payment, I think about coverage. I think, by the way, if you look at statistics today, for example, straight-through processing is about less than 10% of the claim volume is actually being through SDP. Actually, the numbers are around 3 to 5%. Payment is actually one area in which, because it was first to be digitized, I think, you got a lot of workflow automation happening there, right? So that's one area. Coverage, by the way, with OCR, and again, I think computer vision, just from an AI perspective, was much more developed early on. But the OCR side, to understand the coverage, there is a coverage. And I think when you think about how much time, cost, friction you save on that area as combined, I think so I think damage assessment is a big story. By the way, you see the number of competitors out there. Then payment and coverage analysis, automation around that, I think it's another two pieces on the edges.
And that's a great point. I know when COVID occurred, what I was hearing from insurance companies is many of them had these large processing centers with lots of people processing manual checks. And they had to automatically really move to rethink how they were going to issue those payments because they wanted to keep people separated, obviously, with COVID. So yes, I agree. That's low-hanging fruit for sure.
So what you guys say makes total sense. It's quite straightforward and simple, actually, but presumably not easy. So Oded, if I can ask you, what, in your experience, are the challenges to implementing all of the things that you talk about?
The biggest problem we have always, people, right? We are the problem. I think, 5 years ago, I participated in a claims conference in Budapest when you're just starting to even understand what's happening. And it's the first speaker, I remember I was a bit shocked, sliced the board into an opportunity and a risk sections. And he said, I'm going to throw some phrases here and please tell me where to put it. And eventually he put the word technology/automation in the risk, not opportunity side. And I thought I'm in the wrong conference. Fast forward 4 years later, 4.5 years later, 6 months ago, I think in Chicago, Connected Claims. One of the industry, I would say, veterans spoke about automation, and he said, this is what automation for me means. And he puts the Terminator, Schwarzenegger, on the wall, and he said, that actually brought on the end of the world. And I'm like, didn't we actually move in 4.5 years? I think a lot, the talk around automation, the talk about technology, the buzzword, companies buying just chief innovations want to show that we have some tools. But in essence, I think we're still lagging behind. The change management element here, and as I said, across approach, workforce, right? How do we actually upskill the adjuster to be able to cater, to augment between the full automation to halfway to, throughout the way. The ecosystem, as a whole, I think that's the biggest challenge. The rest is really about just making a decision. And I think companies need, and today most than ever, I think, when combined ratio is surpassing 100 points, as we know, last year with inflation rates, supply chain, COVID contribution, companies are bleeding money. The ones that are actually good are contracting razor thin. So I think, what is the business case I'm trying to solve? What is the priority, between the tension of consumer or customer experience, indemnity payment, LAE, and that where is the equilibrium? Get your decision in order, find the use case, and what tools actually are gonna answer that point, and then just focus on that.
Bill, is it always change management and culture?
Well, I think the thing that I've observed over the years, and I provide some advice to insurance companies who work with us on change management, because yes, we're a software company, but we're really also, we've been in this, our staff is Many folks have been in the claims business for many years, so we have lots of experience here. So we have an opportunity to do some brainstorming sessions just to help to think about how to move forward. The number one problem that I see, and some companies are getting very good at this, but the number one problem is normally an insurance company will want to sort of make a change across their entire book of business when they make a change in claims. What I always recommend is find a way in your claims organization to wall off a small section, a market, an office, some market, not the entire book, but a smaller market, and do some test and learn. Because what we have technology can provide a lot of the tools that are needed, but a lot of this is change management in terms of how, on the people side, how we interact and how we work together with technology. So what I recommend is that companies look at creating small actual production teams that they can try new things, try it for 60 days or 90 days. If it doesn't work, you can always pull it back. It's small, it's not going to be a major problem if things don't go as well as you hope. But it's a great way to test and learn, because over the years as I've been involved in innovation, we like to think that we can draw it out on a whiteboard and we put it in play and it works perfectly, but most of the time that doesn't work. And so it's a way to test and learn, dial the process in, and then once you have things working as it needs to, as you feel comfortable about it and your customers are surveyed and they love it, then look at how to roll that across your entire book. So to me, it's test and learn is the big key.
100%. I would say there's an ultra-marathon runner who was asked, when I remember the Wall Street Journal, they asked him, how do you even approach a 237-mile run? Just the thought of it just, make you want to quit. And he said, who's thinking about the 237 mile? Just think mile at a time. I think if you take the first piece and start breaking it, then I believe companies can move fast, and then they discover that there is what I call free lunch. Low risk, high reward, right? That's what it comes down to.
I absolutely agree with you guys. That's the proper way. Very often you see a kind of people go away into a kind of like a dark room. They work on a solution. It's like they come out, it's like ta-da, and it doesn't quite work. There's an expression I'm reminded of, which is, you have a mess, you add a computer to a mess, you get a computerized mess, which is what we want to avoid. And that's actually something that a question from the audience touches on, kind of to either of you. A claims journey can be complex, for example, when assessing liability. How can you make the digital experience user-friendly and not just 100 questions?
I think it's a must, actually, to do something what you call today a dynamic process. So based on the answer that as a consumer is going to give to a question, then the right succinct set of questions will appear and not a long list, which is what usually happens, right? So if we today, for example, take RF and OL, which is highly configured, no code, everybody can do it. You don't need IT for it. Just understand what are the questions you want to have, and what are the answers, capabilities, and what that's going to trigger as the next set of questions. Make it succinct, make it short, and again, historically, by the way, companies used to be very compliance-driven. I mean, the entire industry was compliance-driven. A claim was the orphan child, right? It was all about compliance. This is true, by the way, for how you manage adjuster. And then you're not really working on optimization. This is true for how you actually treat data for regulatory reason, not for data science and optimization, right? Which is a huge miss, because you got a wealth of knowledge sitting there way above and beyond just a claim journey. I think the ability to bring it all together, then create a real right experience for the consumer on the question, you start with that. As I said, proactiveness, and then when you want to understand what are the answers, get the must-have, and then move on.
Yeah. I think we can wrap up with a more practical question, and I'll ask you to limit it to 30 seconds each, please, because we're nearly at time. What's the one thing that our audience members here can take away from this panel discussion to help bring about everything that we've been talking about today? What's a very practical tip?
So I'd say test and learn. I would say take a look at, take a look at rethinking how the process flows today, particularly for those customers who are most interested in the digital channel. And look at the tools that you have, but don't build it based on just tools. Look at the customer, and if you were redesigning your process today and you didn't have all the legacy stuff to worry about, how would you create a process that was extremely user-friendly, Amazon-like, and then look at how the tools fit around that to make that happen. So I would say that, to me, that's more of test and learn. But I think if the audience could take one thing away, that is really critical, especially now with the challenges that we have with inflation and so forth. We've got to take advantage of this technology and take advantage of the customer interest.
The sooner you start, the better you are for short-term and long-term. It's going to take time, even though there's tools, and some people say, let's wait and see what is the right thing for us. The right thing for you, you're going to discover when actually you adopt it. And so the faster you adopt it, the faster you learn, and then you can implement and just do it, like Nike said.
Oh, excellent. And you will have the last word. Thank you to you both for joining me for this panel, and thank you to all of you for listening and engaging. The conversation, no doubt, will continue over coffees and drinks throughout the day. So once again, thank you. Feel free to grab any of us afterwards throughout the day. We're happy to chat. And enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.